You are listening to Ask the Answers podcast. Join me, Adele, as I uncover the knowledge, inspiration, and empowerment the psychic world has to offer. Let's begin. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ask the Answers podcast with myself, Adele. And on today's show, we have got the amazing, the wonderful, the international psychic, Shady Shaman.
Hello out there, everyone. Yeah, Shady Shaman, Shady Shaman. I'm here in Canada, actually, international, and I'd like to say it's the West Coast, best coast, because that's what we say about Canada, because it's the nicest part over here where I'm at. And yeah, so I'm excited to be here with you all today. This is really fun and exciting for me. It's first time for everything, right?
Absolutely. And you've woken up especially nice and early to come on this podcast because, of course, the time difference. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. I was up at, well, we all know in the psychic world that waking up at 3 a.m. is normal for us. So this morning I slept in a little bit until 4:30 and was able to get everything all properly shaved and
Looking good, looking sharp.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Is it cold over there at the moment?
Actually, that's one of the reasons why the West Coast is the best coast here in Canada, because we have it is not cold here. It is chilly. It is only like -2 degrees, and there's no snow on the ground in the Okanagan Valley where I am. So it's just beautiful.
-2. That's still cold for me.
It is a little chilly. Yes. Yes, it can be a little chilly. You definitely need a sweater and some slippers.
Brilliant. Well, we're going to find out all about you. As you mentioned, you haven't really done an interview, being a psychic and all your own experiences and stories from the past. So it's going to be fantastic to get to know you in person as yourself, as a human being, but also with your psychic hat on as well. So when did it start for you? When did you get into the psychic world? Was it early on or quite later on in life?
So there was two different elements to it. The getting right into the psychic aspect of it, when I was in university about 2012, I had some friends who had asked if I would read their tarot cards for them. And they had purchased me my first deck of tarot cards. And I had read for them and that sort of thing. And it was kind of interesting. But prior to that, my family always had like gifts because we're of First Nations descent, and I don't know how much you know about that in England way, but in Canada, we have First Nations people, Métis people, Inuit people, and then in North America, we also have Native Americans. Now, I'm a part of what's called the Métis group of people, which is like a mix between Scottish, English, French, and the First Nations people here. So we were always... The reason I go off on a little bit of a tangent on this is because First Nations people, First Peoples, they have a very interesting tie to the land where a lot of our stories come from our dreams and the things that we experience through our relationship with the land and our relationship with the great creator. And ever since I was really small, my mom was always really big about talking about about dreams and things with us.
Mm-hmm.
And asking us, oh, well, what did you dream about last night? And we'd say silly things like, oh, I was flying around in the car with the Care Bears. And she'd say, oh, well, did you know that the sky represents and bears represent? And we'd say, oh, well, that's interesting. And then we'd go to school and we'd be like, yeah, so we had a dream about Care Bears and it represents this. And our friends would be like, okay, that's weird. And then there was a couple of other different types of situations that, back in the 90s, it wasn't really something to talk about because for Indigenous people, especially, a lot of our gifts were given medications because you're told, like you're not supposed to see things that aren't there or talk to things that aren't there. And that just makes you a crazy person.
Mm-hmm.
And the town that I grew up in actually was known for its insane asylum back all the way to 1912.
Gosh.
And so we always had this little bit of a fear, like these are things that we talk about just within the family, and you don't go to school and share that something touches your shoulder that's not there when you're looking at family photos and stuff. So ever since I was little, I kind of always felt something was different. And then when I went away to university, and I had moved 17 hours away from my family, so it was really my first time being at large from my group of safe people, and just talking regularly about what, you know, to me felt normal, and other people were like, you realize that's not normal and you're kind of scaring me a little bit. And I'm like, oh, like I didn't know, like, I'm sorry, it's just dream interpretation, right? You know, it's nothing scary for me, it's something normal. And so I really had to learn a delicate balance after leaving my family as to like what you can share, what you can't share, who's susceptible to your information and that sort of thing. So like my gifts have been, they were really autopilot for the first probably 30 years of my life because you just don't really realize them. And then after I turned 30 and I quit, you know, drinking and going out on weekends and clearing my mind a little bit more, I realized that it didn't really feel so crazy because there was lots of other people out in the world that have very similar gifts, not the same because we can't jump inside of each other's heads and know those exact interpretations, but to be able to have those conversations and be like, hey, like, yeah, I hear things too. And, you know, it's not a medicated thing. It's something where we all have an internal voice or an internal dialogue. And sometimes you just have to differentiate between that voice that's speaking in a different language and you don't know what it's saying. And then you find out, oh, I have relatives that are Russian and I should probably learn a little bit of Russian. And then you're like, oh, well, Brozhalista is actually a word and it's not just babble. So it's really been a huge discovery figuring out like not just like what gift, because we don't just have one gift, we have so many and they all just kind of pile in together. And yeah, honestly, I feel like the best part of that discovery has been because of other people, because you don't know until you share and people start asking you questions like, how did you know that? And it's like, I don't know.
It's just there. You mentioned about getting your first deck of cards through some friends of yours. Did they know that you were psychic and that's why they gave you a deck of cards? Or is it just, you know, they gave it to you like almost like a party trick type thing? Like, oh, here's some cards. See what you can pull out for us.
Yeah, so the first, it was a little bit of a party trick at first because like I use the term I see you all the time after the movie Avatar because, you know, for us readers, we don't just look at people, we see people. And there's so many people that I saw in university. And this group of friends, we had actually been through a very interesting, almost school shooting type of a thing at our university. I was actually adopted into their traditional family because of this situation. And this is when we started talking. This was a First Nations group of people, like right from northern British Columbia, and they're very much into their dreams and their spirituality and talking with Creator. And because of our situation where we were essentially in the center of a school shooting without there actually being an armed gunman, brought us to a space where we went to go and pick tea at a place called the Oyster Stolo. And my sister Jasmine and I were just talking, and she's like, you know, if I got you a deck of cards, would you read for me? And I said, well, I've learned that I'm not supposed to buy them for myself. This is an old belief, but that you're not supposed to buy them for yourself. And I did have a deck at one point in time, but I gave them away because they scared me. They were too real. And she's like, well, if I buy you a deck, would you read for me? And I said, sure, why not? And I said, if you do that for me, then I will just read for you for free anytime you want. And so that's kind of how it started. And then with my other group of friends that was within that same community, they would come over to the house, and my house ended up becoming like the safe place to come and have I see you conversations. And I call a bitch out, you know, like this is what I see and you need to stop doing that. And it's like, well, I didn't really tell anybody about that. How did you see that? And I'm like, because I'm shady and I know.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
When you talk about dreams, Do you think that a lot of psychics get dreams because you're so busy with your everyday life that it's the easiest way for the other world to connect with you when you're at rest, when you're at sleep, for those messages to come through?
Now, dreams I've found are very interesting because I've found real world implications for my dreams, and it's gotten to a point, not that I can't tell between dream state and living state, but it's almost at the point where I'm in my 40s now, and this life feels like a dream that I've created for myself, because this is the things that we dream about as kids, that you can be able to do a podcast with somebody all the way in the UK. And like, I was approached by you guys to come and join Ask the Answer, and for somebody who humbly just flips over cards and sees people, to be approached um, by an international company like Ask the Answer, it's, am I dreaming? And what does that interpret? And if I were to afterwards look into this and be like, okay, well, Adele had beautiful brown hair, and what does long brown hair mean? And what's behind you with the greenery, and how you've got that slight slope, just to be able to look at those spaces. I look at dream interpretations as like my real life messengers every single day. And when I am dreaming, it's so interesting because it feels like you said, like people have access to us in a really interesting way, where we almost leave our bodies and go into this corporeal like fluff, and we're just able to meet with every single person that we just can't meet with during the day or during our
Mm.
waking time. And I feel my mom and I have always been really connected in that way, because she'll call me in the morning and say, oh, I was in your house, and I was laying on the pine floor with you last night. And I'm like, that's really interesting, because I was laying on the pine floor last night and I was writing in my journal about you. And she's like, oh yeah, those are such nice floors, and your house smells really nice, son.
You got to be careful then.
Oh, definitely. And it that dream state, it puts things into accountability, because it lets, for me anyways, it lets me know that there's always somebody around, and there's always such a beautiful energy to be able to tap into. Even when you feel alone, you're not really alone. And we don't know what happens to that decigram of person when they take their last breath and disappear. They may follow us around. They may become part of that dark matter that comes and wakes us up at 3 a.m. and says, hey, you need to go and make sure that like you're shaved and you're ready today, because there's a lot of people that are going to be listening to what you have to say, so be prepared. And I hear my gran in my head all the time, like her Scottish just it comes through all the bloody time, I tell you.
Brilliant, I love it. You mentioned as well that when you had the deck of cards that it scared you at first. Why did the cards scare you and the dreams didn't?
Well, the dreams used to scare me when I was younger, because we have things called nightmares. And when I was first getting to know the cards had their own sorts of nightmares, because they're very real, and they're very emotional, especially when you start doing them for other people and you call them out for something that there's no way that you could have physically known. And you're just like, oh yeah, I see right here, this is a 3 of swords, and like your past and present and future has been really argumentative, like you've really had to stand up for yourself a lot. And then you say this to somebody who's usually all, yeah, sure, and everything's all happy with them, and they're like, well, how did you know that? Because I always come across as happy. And it's like,
Yeah.
because it's a front. Like, you can't hide from us. We're and it's scary to see that for ourselves sometimes, because when you do your first couple card readings on yourself, and you're doing manifestation, for instance, and all of a sudden that cup of coffee shows up for you, and all you were trying to do was like play around with a little magic, and somebody knocks at your door and drops off a $50 coffee, and you're like, how did that happen? And it takes that continuity of like doing it more often, just to find out how normal it is, how manifestation just literally works. And when you're working with those cards, yes, you are going to get some scary energy from time to time, and you have to be able to embrace the fact that through your cards is not always going to be fluffy bunnies and be able to pet the puppies. It's going to be some scary things that come through. And if you're going to be working with energy, you're not working with just light and you're not working with just dark, you're working with both of them. And sometimes they intertangle and they'll confuse themselves. And we ourselves as the readers have to be that filter to be able to differentiate, like, okay, well, if I'm just going to do fluffy bunnies for people, then I'm sorry, I can't tell you anything bad that's going to happen. And then somebody says, well, I want you to tell me when I'm going to die. And you're like, well, I could.
Mm-hmm.
But number one, how are you going to hold me accountable for that?
Yeah.
Because it's not like
You
you
said
can
I wasn't going to
call.
be here today, and I'm still here.
Yeah. So you lied. But the thing is then it's who you're speaking with as well. And you also have to remember that when you're doing card interpretations for somebody who's very three-dimensional, they're gonna see a death card and they're gonna freak out and think that they're automatically going to get into a car accident. Whereas for ourselves who are more fifth dimensional, sixth, seventh, going up into our eighth dimensions, we see those transitions that, we die every night we go to bed. Like every time you lay down and you don't have function of your body, you are not living. So to look at that in retrospect and to try to pair that with dreaming, it's like, is dreaming paired with the cards, paired with your living life, something scary? Yes. And is it also something good at the same time? Yes. But how do you balance between those two things? And that's why I did get rid of a couple decks of cards, but then the same deck has showed up 4 times. Every time I've put it in the bin, and it shows up exactly when I need it. So I can't ignore that coincidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I've lost you there. You still
I'm
there?
back.
Oh, you
Sorry.
are there. You're going into the dark. Don't leave me.
Are you there still?
I am still there, absolutely. So, I mean, you mentioned there that,
Did I
people.
freeze?
You did. You're fine. You're moving again. You're living.
Oh, sugar.
Can you hear me? Oh, we've lost him for a second. He'll be back online in just a few moments' time. So we're speaking to Shady Shaman. If you have just joined us on the podcast, he is back live with us right now, streaming in. So Shady, you mentioned there that it can sometimes be scary having a reading, but I suppose that's where your professionalism will come in, where you don't just leave people hanging and say, well, this is going to happen, see you later. If things aren't maybe good at the moment, or there are some obstacles coming someone's way, it's about how to get them through it, how to talk them, maybe how to avoid them or how to overcome them or how long these periods are going to last for, and giving them those sort of, answers that maybe are going to help them through those difficult times. So it's not so scary.
Right. Yeah, and a good part of that too is being able to differentiate, if on my profile it says that no question is too weird. And it's true because like my name is Shady Shaman. I'm going to tell you shady things, but you have to be prepared for them. And I'm also jumping into your energy during that point in time. And if I feel like your energy isn't ready to hear, if you're asking about your kid that's went away and hasn't called you in 3 months because they're with another parent, etc., you may not want to hear from me that your little one is out busy bumping uglies with somebody else because that's what they're doing. That's why they're not calling. And I can't tell a mom that. I can say, well, I'm sorry. I don't know if I can answer that question specifically for you because you might just have to wait for a phone call. And so we can't always answer your questions because there's a chance that there's somebody that's more suited to how gentle you need that to be. And that's why it's so lovely to have so many different types of personalities to access, because some people love to rip it off like a band-aid. I've had a few people call from the States who are just like, baby, you need to tell me if that mother is cheating on me. And it's like, okay, yeah. And I see a sun card here and a swords card. And they're like, no, I don't want to hear anything about cards. Just tell me if that MF is cheating on me. Can you feel that? And I'm like, yeah, baby, I can actually feel that. And I can feel what you're going through here right now. And she's like, all right, now we're getting somewhere. And you get those types of people.
Yeah, tell me how it is. No
Yeah.
frills.
Yeah, no frills.
something I liked on your profile was first readings are like first dates. They are awkward and you are both getting to know one another. I like that.
Oh, and yes, this is our first date, Adele, too. So this is where we get to like spill all the beans and tell the stuff that it's like, oh wow, I had no idea. And
Yeah.
and I love those first dates because as well, in our circle, in the Métis circle, we call ourselves two spirit people, the people that are gay or whatever letter it is you go by these days. I don't know. I'm one of the what we call old gay people, and I don't have a letter, so I'm sorry if I offend anybody when I say that. But moving forward with that, I have this really beautiful ability to be able to have both feminine and masculine nature to myself, so I can still be supportive to my men friends and be able to understand, like, what's going on in the male body, but then I can also be supportive of my female friends who might need that little bit more of like a gentler male to talk to. Lots of my lady friends as well ask me to facilitate things like red tent, and I'm not sure how many people are aware of red tent, but there's green tent for men, red tent for women, and it helps. I'm not like a person that facilitates that. I offer the space for that. So it's not always specifically me that has to do the healing. It's the circle of people that are involved with that I can maybe help to connect you with. There might be more people here that might be better suited to a conversation that's a little bit gentler. I may not have the ability to let you know specifically what's going on with your moon time, but I can definitely have like a quick little look and like a graze and those sorts of things. So I'm going to do them all with honor and respect as well. And if you don't feel like you're being respected, that definitely comes from your side of things. It doesn't come from my side of things, because you can't disrespect what we do. It's divine. It's divine.
You said growing up that you had to learn sometimes when to speak and when to hold back because it wasn't maybe as acceptable in the area that you were in, maybe sometimes seen frowned upon, or being a witch or the evil or mentally ill, whatever it might have been. When did it, I mean, what was your sort of upbringing like yourself? Did you find you could express yourself with your psychic ability, or well, I know in your area that you said it was difficult, but I mean, just generally growing up, did you then really shut that down, that side of things? Or could you still be yourself, even obviously with your sexuality? Did you have tough times? Did you struggle through, with that side of things in life?
Yeah. I At this point I can look back and say, like, yeah, like I had really holistic parents, and I had good friends around, and but growing up it wasn't easy. I was very much like the weird kid, like I wet the bed until I was probably like in the third grade, because like my dreams would scare me,
Yeah.
and I couldn't get out of bed, and I was the kid that smelled like pee probably until the third grade.
Oh,
And then my best friend and we've been friends through that since 1988, and we're still best friends. So I've always had that one constant friend
yeah.
close by, where I didn't really have to worry about the larger group. And then I moved from private school to public school in the eighth grade, which was really, really, really interesting, because in private school, it was very religious, and we were one step away from uniforms. So in Canada, like, for us to wear uniforms at school, it's very like hoity-toity, not compared to like the UK, where everybody wears a uniform essentially.
Hmm.
um, Ours, it was steps away from being able to wear uniforms, and having those safe people around and knowing who you could talk to. And then moving into public school, there was more there was more pressure to just be a teenager and get out with people and go and do things on the weekend. And so I started organizing like community events in probably grade 9, where we do community dances between like our little towns, and we just try to bring people together. And I loved bringing people together in a way that was like, I don't know, to me it felt spiritual, because I always grew up going to church, and I didn't have that structure moving to these tiny places that just had private schools and stuff. So I really did have to, I felt myself, I had to hide just a little bit of who I was, because like being in a small town and being gay in a small town, especially in the 90s, it was a very different world back then. It
Mm.
wasn't safe to
Yeah.
be that, because everybody was still allowed to have an opinion. We didn't have phones and social media around. We didn't have accountability. So literally, like we had fears growing up that, somebody would tie us behind a truck and drag us around, because there was like nobody to hold accountable. So when it came to your gifts, literally, I spent most of my life trying to figure out who was the safest people to talk to.
Yeah.
And even in university, it took a little while to do that, because I couldn't talk to all of my professors about it. And we were really fortunate to have our First Nations elders and our Métis elders accessible at the university. And even a couple of them I scared, as I started to babble in what I call my soul speak and my angelic language, because I understand what they're saying, but it doesn't have any physical word to it.
Yeah.
So I didn't I'm thankful that my mom was very supportive in a lot of ways, and then not supportive in a lot of ways, because she taught me independence. And the same thing with my dad. My dad is very much about our independence, and teaching us about, who we are and what we want to choose, as opposed to like the larger group of people. And I did fall into that group for such a long time and ignored my gifts. And that's why I quit drinking in my 30s, because my gifts weren't really anything special when I was hammered.
Mm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
trying to
Not
fit
so
in, right?
clear-headed.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's almost like a double whammy there for you, because growing up and sort of discovering yourself and, your sexuality and also spirituality, again, things that people probably don't understand sometimes. A lot to take on at an early age.
Very much so. Yeah, and like with my family, because on my mom's side, I'm the first oldest boy, so there wasn't really expectations put upon me that I was aware of. But then there was also those expectations, like, hey, like I'm the first boy, so inheritance technically is supposed to go to me. And well, now you're not choosing to have kids and a wife, so that inheritance gets split up between the people that
Oh,
are
God.
having children and a wife. And like,
Wow.
the physical things just don't mean things to me, because I spent time with my grandparents and I learned those stories. And my papa, who was the First Nations Métis side of the family, I spent so much time with him, and he never really said much. We didn't know anything. I don't know how much you guys know about residential school in the
Hmm.
UK, and the Truth and Reconciliation that we have in Canada. But my papa was a part of the residential schools, and going to school with the nuns, where we weren't allowed to speak our language, and we weren't allowed to have our traditions. We weren't allowed to talk about our dreams. We weren't allowed to, speak with our siblings in residential school. And and anytime I'd ask him about, what was school like for you, he'd say, oh, the nuns were just really mean. And I'd say, well, like how? And he's like, oh, they had meter sticks and they'd hit us over the knuckles and things like that.
Yeah.
But that was it. And I didn't find anything out about it until I went to university, and then we identified as Métis, First Nations, etc. And they're like, oh, take this class, and these are all the things that you can learn in residential school. And I was like, oh, how fun. Like, I learned to pick a tree. and and all the things that my grandparents kept secret, because they didn't talk about those stories.
Mm.
And to be able to hear these stories, not from my papa, but from a professional, and then to be told, oh, this did happen and it's not happening anymore, so like you can let it go and move forward. But it's like, but then I found out that these schools were right next to this mental hospital where I grew up. This whole time we had our own Canadian version of a concentration camp, telling us we couldn't speak our language, that we couldn't speak with our relatives, that we couldn't go home for Christmas, that if our families weren't well enough, that we couldn't go home to them afterwards, and we were adopted out. So there's so much
Gosh.
fractionalization that's happened, that like I don't even know my my Métis language, and I'm now just starting to come back into that and get to know it a little bit, starting this week actually. And so a lot of our stories get lost through those languages, and we just don't really know who else we're supposed to talk to. So life becomes a big secret.
Wow. That's crazy.
Isn't it? Isn't it? I didn't go to residential school myself, so
Yeah,
know
yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. So from those school years, what jobs did you go into? Did you go into normal jobs? Did you work in a restaurant? Were you a barman? You know, were you, I don't know, a scientist? And what did you do before you got into the psychic world? Or has it always been psychic work for you?
No. Um,
Did you work at McDonald's?
I did actually work at McDonald's for one shift.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant.
And most of the time my jobs were led because people would come and see me somewhere where I was working or living or existing, and they'd say, "We need you." And I'm like, okay. Like, all I'm doing is delivering pizza. And this is actually how I got my job at McDonald's. And the manager there, he ordered pizzas from me all the time when I worked at Boston Pizza as the delivery driver. And one day he was like, "You're just wow. Can you come and be on my team?" And I'm like, "McDonald's?" He's like, "Yeah, like you could be management, you could this, you could that." And I'm like, "McDonald's." Uh, so the one shift was nice. They made a $5 tip, and that was a long time ago.
And some free chips.
But yeah, yeah, and we weren't. I don't know. It was interesting because I always thought, go for the jobs that have the big money, but then I didn't enjoy doing them. And in the province where I grew up in Canada, going to work away on the oil rigs is massive
Mhm.
for like my central Alberta region. And the fact that I didn't do that and go and make $32 an hour, $55 an hour, and I stuck with $12 an hour and $9 an hour, my family were all just like flabbergasted
Mhm.
as like, why wouldn't you go get a real job? And I'm like, these are real jobs. And they're like, but you're struggling. And I'm like, but I don't need a $10,000 boat. Like, I don't care. And
Yeah.
they're like, but what are you going to do on your time off? And I'm like, the same thing I do on my working time. I don't know. So I've done steakhouses. I've worked in government. I've worked with children who have developmental disabilities who are non-communicative. I've delivered flowers. I've worked in kitchens. I've worked in French bakeries. I've sold insurance. Oh my gosh, like I I don't I have such a long list of jobs that I've done that I'm like, I think I should probably read for people and give advice at this point.
Because you must have learned so much, all those roles, they're not sort of mistakes. You always learn something from every role you do.
Yeah, definitely. And they were never arbitrary, even the ones that I was fired from or I quit from, because it's life, and sometimes that just it happens. You can't stay somewhere forever. It's life is very static, and it's always moving around. And
Yeah.
I was recently at a job for 4 years, and I love what I do, working for the Artful Hand store. And after 4 years, it's gotten to a point where it kind of loses its luster. And now I'm going through my next shift as to what I would like to do. Am I going to work from home now? Am I going to do this full time for people?
Mm.
Am I going to go and work at a cute little coffee shop again just because it's really nice and it's just down the street? Like, and to me, it does matter, but it doesn't at the same time, because like I've never had an issue finding what I need when it comes time. There's always
Trust.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't mind, I don't know how open you are with things, but how has the psychic word and your psychic ability impacted or affected any relationships that you've had?
Yeah. I'm extremely open when it comes to this. My relationships, it took me a really long time to find my partner. My partner and I have been together now for 4 years. And I feel like we work so well because we are such separate individuals, and we do give each other so much space to be individuals. I found a lot of my relationships and friendships where it became about helping the other person primarily became very one-sided because I see the long terms of people, and I see their potential, and I see the wonderfulness in every single person that I meet. And my partners actually helped me to identify this. I apparently get really disappointed when the people don't meet up to their potential.
Mm.
And I don't, it's not that I'm mean about it, but I can only push you to be something so far. If
Mm.
I can see that potential, amazing. But if you don't see it yourself and you spend the renewal of our friendship every single time asking me the same stupid question and doing the same stupid things, I just, at 41, I just don't know how much patience I have left for that kind of stuff because I don't drink anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to have a conversation with somebody
Not going to
who's
help themselves.
wasted.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's why my name took a shift from to being Shady Shaman, is because, like, yeah, I'm going to say some shady things, and I'm sorry if you're going to ask me questions and then get upset with me and say, well, I didn't call you for a lecture, but you're paying me $120 for an hour of my time. Yes, you are calling me for a lecture. So I'm
So listen
sorry to
up.
call you out. Yeah, sorry, not sorry. And so with my relationships, it is difficult because you have to know when to remove yourself from people, and you have to know when you has had enough. And a lot of people don't appreciate that. And it takes a long time to create healthy boundaries, especially if you're not good at creating boundaries. And people take offense to it when you say, yeah, I want to hang out by myself tonight, and you don't sound like fun at all.
Mm. Oh.
People get really butthurt about that unless they're on the same page as you,
Yeah.
like my partner. And I'm like, I really don't want to hang out with you tonight because I'm just not feeling it. And he's like,
Okay.
cool.
So,
All
yeah.
right. Yeah, go do your thing then. It's cool. I'll see you in 4 hours after I'm done gaming.
Yeah.
Bye.
You can be a
Yeah.
partnership, but having your own independence and your own sort of way in life is really important. I think that's why me and my husband work so well, that we don't clip one another's wings. If anything, we're like, yeah, go for it. If you want to go out, if you want to do this, we both support one another really nicely, and having that sort of balance where you've got
Mhm.
boundaries, you respect one another, but also, give that person that time to do what they want, what they enjoy. It's their life as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And it's beautiful that you have that with your husband because, as another reader, I'm sure that you understand the opt-out clause in a relationship is so bloody important because, like, why would you force somebody to come and do something that they don't want to do?
Yeah. I mean, I
Especially if
still
you're
hate the fact that he doesn't pick up the dog poo and he doesn't tidy up the washing and he doesn't tidy up his clothes, but he supports his family. He's a good dad. He's consistent. He's reliable and he's funny. So we can't have it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. And those are the little 3D things that, if you set the knife beside the sink as opposed to in the hot water, it's just what we choose, and we choose our people every single day, and we don't have to choose them. We choose to choose them, and we don't have to choose to pick up after them. We could leave them there. It's our own way of putting order to the universe.
Yeah.
And to me, our partnerships in the 3D, like, of course I get a little upset when I have to do the laundry or pick up the one sock that's on my clean floor, like, but who doesn't? you know
You have one sock. I have about 10. Oh, dear.
It's beautiful. It's
So
beautiful.
obviously, nice finding out all about you as a person. But tell us a little bit about the different ways that you do readings, because I noticed on your profile there that you do work with angel cards, you work with runes, obviously you work with mediumship as well. So
Yeah.
do you work with one side more than other, or do you just go with that caller and what comes through at that time, and what you're drawn to?
Yeah. So initially, I start off really easy most of the time, just with like flipping over a couple of cards for people, especially when we're on our first date, and I'm trying to figure out like what you want to order off the menu, whether you're going to be an appy, a salad, or a meal person. And so it helps a little bit because most people when they call in, they say, "I need you to look into John," and I'm like, "Okay," and I ask, "Is there anything else?" And they say, "No." And I'm like, okay, well, then I'm sorry. I got to grab this little deck of cards here and go, John says Page of Wands reversed and this, the Wheel of Destiny. And then we have 10 of Swords. Oh, you're going to have a fight with John here in the next little while because he's being a little bit immature and he looks like he's taking over a little bit of your Wheel of Destiny, Adele. So you're going to have some words, but those words are going to be the end of that conversation because, well, I'm sorry, John, but you're being a little bit childish with the things that you're asking for, and I'm a little busy. So moving forward, la, la, la. So I feel like, and then I say something like that, and people are like, well, how did you know that? And I'm like, I don't know. Do you have a more specific question? And they say something like, well, yeah, John and I have actually just come through our last little fight, and I feel like today was supposed to be that day where we fight. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. And then I grab my angel deck and I look over at my angel deck and I'm like, well, it's telling me right here that you're supposed to join a group of writers because John doesn't understand what you're trying to write. So you keep banging his head against the blackboard and trying to get him to understand. John's not going to understand. And I'm sorry. So the angel cards are telling you, go find a new group of friends and leave your poor damn John alone because he doesn't want to hear your shit no more.
Yeah.
And people are like,
because friends and
oh.
family can't say that to them, can they? And that's what's great about having a reading is that you get that honesty from someone who's not involved in your lives. It's not gonna, yes, you obviously you know the way to deliver that message to somebody that they're able to take it, but sometimes you do need that wake up call.
Yeah, and I often tell people because they'll say, well, I'm trying to do that, and I say, well, try into this hand right here and then poo into this one, and then you're going to see one of them fill up way faster. So don't try, either do it or don't. And if you can't decide, then move past it because that's not your decision to make. And they're like, oh, well, that wasn't really a nice way to say it because if I do poo into my hand, it's going to be gross. And I'm like, then don't poo in your hand and stop trying. Just go do it.
Oh gosh. I mean, I can imagine what your readings are like and some of the things that you say. Brilliant. What do you get? What do you get back from your readings? What makes you keep going and doing this?
It's a very simple term. I am you. We are all each other. And every single person that I meet or that I speak with, there's a little bit of myself there. And we're so much alike and we're all going through so many similar things. And we think that we're all so individual and that nobody would understand. But then you pick up the phone from somebody who's called you at random and they're on the other side of the world or the other side of the continent and they're saying exactly what you were dreaming about last night. And the reading essentially is 50% for them and then 50% for me at the same time because it's helping me to rationalize my own internal thoughts that I've been having to do with, oh, this person gave me a brand new perspective as to, wow, I never thought about that myself. Are you sure you're not a reader? And they say, well, actually, I work for Ask the Answer, and I was just calling to check in with you because I've read your profile and I had a really tough reading with somebody. And I'm like, oh, yeah, like I see here that like you do this for a lot of people. And like sometimes we ourselves just need to be able to check in and be like, am I really that shady? And people are like, no, it's just that I wasn't prepared for that. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I apologize if I hurt your feelings. Like, if you're crying, please don't hang up the phone.
Yeah.
Like, let's continue speaking here. So,
yeah.
I love reading with other people because it's a way to get to know more about myself while they're simultaneously getting to know. If you ever have an opportunity, there's a story called The Egg by Andy Weir. It's a very short story and it's absolutely lovely for perspective building. So if anybody out there listening wants to read The Egg by Andy Weir, it is beautiful. I've read it 5,000 times. It's probably going to be my eulogy and it is wonderful short story to let you see who else is in the world with you.
Nice. Oh, I have to check
Mhm.
that one out. Now, we are
Mhm.
running out of time. I mean, I could speak to you for hours. You're so easy to talk to, but I've got some quick fire
Thank you.
round questions for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so what star sign are you?
Gemini.
What's your favorite animal?
I really love my female bettas because you can keep them in a sorority, not like the males.
Oh, nice.
Mhm.
Favorite destination?
Um, I would have to say that it's definitely the UK because my family comes from there and I've been back to visit and I'm planning a trip back next year. So I can't wait to come back to the UK.
Favorite color?
Green.
What shoe size are you? Not that it matters.
10 and a half. And look at how big the hands are from pointer to pointer.
Do you know what? There's a funny story with that one because my husband, when we first met, I said, "Oh, what shoe size are you?" He said, "Oh, size 11." Oh, God, you've got big feet. Like, and then I went and bought him some trainers for his birthday, and he said, "Oh, these are too big." I went, "But you said you were size 11." He went, "No, I'm a size 9. I just said that to impress you when we first met." I was like, "What? Why would you do that?" Because he says, "You know what they say about people with big feet?" I was like, "Well,
Yeah,
obviously not
big
big
socks.
shoes."
Big socks.
Oh, Shady, it's been amazing speaking to you. If people want to
you.
get a hold of you, do you know your PIN number at the top of your head? Because
Ooh.
if you
Oh,
don't, I
you
do know it.
do. You do know it? What is
It's 700501. How often are you on the phone
70050?
lines for people?
I'm usually on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I take Thursdays off because I deliver papers in my neighborhood, and I'm here Friday. And then I'm here my time in the morning from 7 a.m. till 10. And then I come back on again from 4 until 7 p.m. my time, which is like overnight for you guys. So if you need to
Yeah.
call me after 3 a.m. waking you up, I'm here.
When you can't sleep, she's there for you. Any
You
final words
betcha.
to our lovely listeners before we leave it there?
Final words of wisdom: love each other like you love yourselves. And if you can't love yourself, then start there. Please start there. Love yourself because it's the most important, wonderful person you are ever going to meet.
Shady, we love you. You've been amazing today. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, your life, your psychic ability, your, straight to the point attitude, which we love. And we wish you all the best for the future. Keep doing what you're doing because you're smashing it. And people are lucky to get through to have an amazing reading. So keep going. You're doing fantastic.
You're super duper. Thanks so much, love, for the call today. I really appreciate it.
And have a lovely Christmas.
Yes, you too, with your holiday seasons. Make sure that you stay warm and chunky. It's that time of year.
I'll try. I'll have a couple of mince pies. That'll warm me up.
That'd be lovely. Yeah.
Take care. Bye.
Take care, Adele. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Ask the Answers podcast. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and save to your library. Remember, there are 100 psychic readers available on our website for readings 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. To triple your credits on your first purchase, visit asktheanswer.com and click on the new customer offer banner.